Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast, and it is your host Luca here. And today we are going to be taking a look at the Independent Picture House, and we've got Claire. Is it Lechtenberger or Lichtenberg?
Close. It's Lechtenberg. You just ignore the H. It's an extremely Austrian and German last name.
Lechtenberg. Okay.
Yeah.
Very well.
It means light city. Fun fact.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep.
So today, Claire, we're going to be talking about IPH, and the big thing that really that I really want to discuss is the planned expansion. Because when I spoke with Brad and Jay in September, we were mostly chatting about how the IPH was built as a successor to the Manor House Theater, which closed, I think, like 2021 or 2022. So, so with this expansion, it got me really excited because there are just so many things going on here. So I just want to kick off. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up in IPH.
Yeah, so I'm Claire. I'm originally from New York. I came down to Charlotte for college. I went to Queen's University of Charlotte, and I graduated with a double major in communication and creative writing because creative writing and poetry was the passion, but I always said that communication is how I'll get health insurance. After graduating, I worked at a few different nonprofits. I had interned with Digital Charlotte, which is now known as the Center for Digital Equity. I worked for just over 4 years at YWCA Central Carolinas, doing all of their external marketing and communications with the philanthropy team. And then I worked for just over a year at Charlotte Ballet in Uptown. They were formerly known as the North Carolina Dance Theater, and now live on South Tryon Street, or North, doesn't matter. Tryon Street.
Yeah, they're on that main drag, and
they're right by Valpa Center. So that it's like the opposite end of Uptown from all of the museums. And while I was at Charlotte Ballet, that's when I started volunteering for the Independent Picture House. So to kind of go back a little bit, like outside of the professional scope, I grew up going to the movies and watching movies constantly. My dad would take me and my siblings to the movie theater every Saturday. Didn't matter what was playing, we would see something. So I've seen a lot of bad movies and a lot of good movies. And my family would also just bond over going to Blockbuster and renting VHSs and then DVDs, and just having like a movie night in. So I'm the youngest and they didn't care what I was watching. So because of that, one of my first core memories is being in the movie theater watching Titanic as a 3-year-old and just thinking that Kate Winslet had the most beautiful hair. So because of this love of film and going to the movies and having a special place there, I loved the Manor Theater. I would walk from Queens to the Manor to see a Wes Anderson movie or a weird Shakespearean film. And then I started going to Charlotte Film Society screenings. So Charlotte Film Society used to just rent out auditoriums around Charlotte, whether it was in Arsley Grand or the Manor Theater or even at Theater Charlotte, and have screenings. So I would go and see Parasite or The House That Jack Built and would purchase movie tickets or buy a year-long membership to support them. And so then when I heard that Manor Theater was closing, I, as well as a majority of my neighbors in Charlotte, was really disappointed and sad because, it was the art house cinema that was left. There was no other one. And then to immediately hear almost that same day that the Charlotte Film Society was launching a capital campaign to build the Independent Picture House got me really pumped again. And I could only give like $25 at the time, but I was able to give something and be a part of it, which was really nice.
Right.
So while I'm at Charlotte Ballet, I volunteer for the Independent Picture House. I'm helping with their member newsletters, which at the time was every single month. We have changed that to make it every other month. And because of that, I got to have kind of just a sit down coffee with Brad to just introduce myself, as well as with one of our board members, Lisa Davis, and just talked about the importance of adding development and philanthropic messaging to regular communications. And I use the example of April as National Volunteer Appreciation Month. So like throughout April, there should be some sort of volunteer appreciation day or communications that highlight the volunteers that make IPH special. And Brad was like, oh, did you just like make up that day? Like, did you just make up that time of year? I went, no, that's a real thing. So he was pretty impressed by the knowledge I had been able to acquire throughout my time in nonprofits of just different nonprofit oriented communications. And then my former boss at YWCA, Sarah, sent me the job description for Director of Development at Independent Picture House. And she said, I know it's not a communications role, but you're the biggest movie lover that I know. So I applied to it, and Brad immediately emailed me back and said, let's get coffee tomorrow. And I said, tomorrow doesn't work, but let's do Friday. And then we had like a 90-minute interview, and the rest is history. So I joined the Independent Picture House team as the Director of Development and Marketing because of that marketing background in September of 2023. So just less than a year now, I've been a part of the team. My very first week was actually the Charlotte Film Festival.
Wow.
So I just dove straight in, working long nights at the cinema and getting to know members and donors and volunteers and watching new and emerging movies. So it's just been really exciting ever since. And one of my favorite things is that I just get to talk about movies with people.
Now, are you the first director of marketing for IPH, or was there anybody else doing that role before you stepped in?
So technically the role that I filled was the just director of development. And before me, there was Kendra Dodds, who did an incredible job. She oversaw all of the grant and donor relations, especially within that first 2-year period of starting up. And then on the marketing side, there was just Ivana Woodcock. She is currently our marketing and volunteer coordinator. And she also assists with rentals because individuals can rent out individual auditoriums. So I'm the first individual to have the marketing director and the development director title in general, but like combined.
So you're basically working both roles then,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're wearing two hats as it were.
And that's the way a nonprofit typically is. It's you have to be okay with wearing 17 hats at one time.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it can get to be a lot, but that's what I signed up for. So it's perfectly fine. And at the end of the day, I know how much this team appreciates me and how much I appreciate this team and how we're so focused on this mission to educate, engage, and enable the community through film and to just share that joy of film in general.
Yeah, and that's something that Brad and Jay mentioned in the interview in September, which oddly enough was the same month you started.
Mhm.
So I want to go ahead and dive right into that. So thank you for the intro.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the best way to word it, because I mean that part of Charlotte that you guys are in, it's known for being an artsy, the arts district of Charlotte, right? Just like obviously uptown Charlotte is going to be the financial and entertainment hub, and then South Charlotte is more of like golf courses and everything, and then the old part of Charlotte's going to be Dilworth and Myers Park. So in terms of trying to cultivate the reputation and the image of IPH as like an art house theater, what are you guys doing to kind of promote IPH as like a place where films that people have never seen before can be seen, and how do you generate that interest? Because frankly, you could walk down the street and be like, oh, well, there's another Marvel movie coming out, I'll go ahead and check that out. Or or especially now, since we're living in in an age of of instant streaming, if someone wants to watch a Bollywood movie, why why bother driving all the way up to North Charlotte when you can just, download it from Netflix and just watch it there?
Great questions. So, um, I'm going to answer with kind of like a two-prong. One is a focus on our programming and special events, and the other being our community programs.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, as you mentioned, the Independent Picture House, we're located right on the outskirts of NODA. So, NODA is that arts district. It's where you have like neighborhood theater and really cool, smelly cat coffee, and Divine Barrel. And then we have this kind of like Eastway Sugar Creek area. So the neighborhood we're in is technically being now called the Trailhead Arts District. We'll see if it sticks, but it's called Trailhead because technically the Carolina Thread Trail, aka the Greenway, goes right in front of the cinema. So by 2026, that entire trail will connect to the rest of it. So
Oh yeah, that's right. Because there's a park. It's Alexander Park or something like that. That's
something
nearby.
like that, yeah.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so ideally people from like Myers Park would be able to just hop on the Greenway bike all the way to IPH and see a movie. So we're technically in a federal opportunity zone, which means that a majority of the buildings in our immediate area are basically abandoned warehouses that will either be restored and reused for a different type of business, or mixed use. Sorry, there's a dramatic fire truck going on outside.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Or we're not pushing, and by we I mean the developers of the area, they're not pushing any current residents out because there are no current residents. So IPH is kind of serving as this anchor for this current neighborhood, getting people to come out to it while all this new retail and restaurant businesses are starting to pop up. So a quarter mile away from the cinema is the Sugar Creek light rail stop. So we're very accessible from transportation. And at that is called the Pass. And there's going to be Soul Gastro Lounge reopening there in September. We're going to have Maria's Tacos, which is a taco place. We've got a billiards hall, 828, Pine 828, which is an event venue. And then across the street from that is about 300 apartment units. And then immediately surrounding IPH is going to be about 1,500 townhomes. And in the immediate neighborhood area, there's going to be at least 5,000 units of housing that pop up within the next 5 years. So we're expecting a massive increase in foot traffic. But in the meantime, before all that organic interest of just neighbors walking by comes, we've been very strategic in partnering with local organizations and resources for events like our Community Impact Film Series, which always focus on the topics of mental health, women's health, immigration, or homelessness. And they involve typically like an hour of networking with fellow attendees, and then a screening of a narrative or series of short films, a post-screening talkback with community experts, as well as one or two of the filmmakers, and then a resource fair after, which can typically have either just nonprofits and NGOs tabling and sharing information, and even offering a volunteer opportunity. For example, we had Roof Above in November 2023 come and let our attendees make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for their program participants. And then through our other community programs, we've actually been going out into the communities and not expecting every single patron of IPH to come to our cinema because it might not be accessible to them. They might not have a car, or they may feel it's far out. We'll usually get that feedback from people that have never been there of, oh, it's just so far away. And then they'll come and they'll be like, okay, it actually wasn't that far. And then they'll end up becoming regulars. And so through Indie on Wheels, from February to June, we were funded by ASC's Culture Blocks grant. And we went to 1 rec center and 4 libraries, and we screened different documentaries at each location. We had a post-screening talk back, either with the filmmaker or subject area experts. And again, that was completely free to all attendees. So all they had to do was just go to their local library and they could enjoy some film from IPH. And then we would give out a free movie voucher to them after when they completed our grant survey. But then throughout the year, we have this really dynamic programming. And that is truly thanks to Jay and Brad. As you know, they go to film festivals to kind of stake out what's coming up, but they also really have their ear to the film floor to stay in the know about any movies that are about to have releases that are in that Indian art house and foreign film market. So I think a great example of how we attract people to just these art house movies instead of just going to see the next big Disney Marvel studio churn out is we'll program movies people just want to see and that they've been hearing about. For example, we just had I Saw the TV Glow, which is a brand new film with, by Jane Sjoberg, I want to say is her last name, new female director, and it stars Justice Smith. And basically, we ended up running it for, I think, at least 6 weeks or so, which was much longer than we had originally planned to. But so many people just kept coming out to see this movie. And we found out that we were one of the last cinemas in the South to play it. And we even had a couple come from Augusta, Georgia, just to see the movie. And then they walked in and they're like, oh my gosh, this place is really cool. Watched the movie, came out and said, you know, we just came because we wanted to see I Saw the TV Glow, but now we've been here and we're going to come back. And I was like, can you put that in writing? And then they left. And then they left. But I mean, even with that film ended up surpassing over 1,000 tickets sold at IPH. And it is now ranked in terms of tickets in our top 10 films. So we'll also, in order to incentivize people to come out to the cinema rather than just stay home and stream something because of the comfort of their house and is having these post-screening talkbacks. So often we'll book a movie and we'll know that we'll immediately have to be competing with AMC and Regal if it's Kinds of Kindness, because of course they're going to pick that up. Or if it is a 1 week only screening of a documentary like Songs of Earth, which was a Norwegian movie that I'm pretty sure Jay talked about the last time he was here with you. And so we want to get people out. So we'll either have something like a dress up contest of dress up as Emma Stone's character in the suit in Kinds of Kindness, and you'll get a free small popcorn, or a talk back of, oh, we're playing Songs of Earth. This movie focuses on the importance of connecting with nature and how that can be very meditative. So we're inviting the vice president of conservation partnerships of wildlife, North Carolina Wildlife Federation, Natalie, to come and do a talk back one day. And the other day, we're going to have Sybil McGowan, a meditation specialist, come and do a guided meditation after the screening. And it will generate interest, and people will want to come. And sometimes when individuals miss the talk back, they'll reach out and they'll say, I missed it. Do you have a recording of it? And so on our YouTube channel, we always aim to put our talkbacks that have been filmed up there so that people can watch them whether or not they were able to attend the film.
And I think that's something that that you really don't see in the filmmaking experience anymore, is the fact that you get to sit down and actually have an in-depth discussion about it.
Yeah.
Because most of us have been, I mean, either you could say we've been programmed or we've been conditioned to just, you know, take in the product and then we forget about it as if it's not, as if it had never happened. And it's such a weird thing too, because when you think about it, you know, with the amount of effort and capital that goes into making these films, you think they would have a, you know, a lasting impression. But there are some movies out there that, you know, when they put them on screen and you sit, you know, you do your 2 hours, kind of just say, well, that's just one movie I'd like to forget. So I think so I think with what you guys, you know, are doing at IPH and what they used to do at Manor House Theater, or sorry, Manor Theater, was to at least try to, you know, give people movies that are, you know, that aren't made from, you know, cut from the same cloth, as it were. Um, so I really do want to talk about the plan for expansions um, because IPH, is a relatively new venue
Yeah.
compared to other theaters in the area, and to hear that IPH is expanding its facilities, was both as a surprise and a delight to me, because it because it indicates, something, you guys must be doing something right to go and put out these plans for expansion, and to put up a call to action to try to get donations. So can you talk about, like, what prompted that? What was the genesis of these expansion plans?
Oh, most certainly. I'll give you kind of almost the unfiltered version too. So, essentially, towards the end of 2023, we were finalizing our fiscal year budget. We're a January to December organization, which is not that common for nonprofits. Nonprofits are typically July to June. So, with that in mind, we're like, we're going to be really strategic. We're going to be competitive in terms of the donation budget and the grant budget, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then right after our board had approved that fiscal year plan and the strategic plan, which involved just a breakdown of how to increase memberships, how to increase on-screen advertising, and then eventual creating a 3 to 5 year vision, which the third bullet was increasing capacity, both mission focused and facility, which meant basically 5 years down the line, we should really think about opening a second location. We're doing pretty well right now.
And that was the original idea
That
too,
was
was to
the that
open.
was the original idea, was like,
Okay.
oh, we're only gonna have 3 screens here, but we should really keep in mind like any possible venues that become vacated that we can move to, whether that's in Rock Hill or West Charlotte or South Charlotte or anything like that. So on the other side of things, we are located in a mixed use building. So we're the center suite essentially, with our 3 screens, the micro, auditorium 1 and auditorium 2. To the left of us, that's currently being constructed a coffee shop, which is actually the second location for Rosie's Wine Garden, which is in Noda, the Rose McGill Garden. But the front suite will be coffee only, and then the back will be a wine bar and heavy hors d'oeuvres. And then originally to our right was Charlotte Art League, who had overseen the entire space next to us for their artist studios, the entire hallway behind us, and the entirety of the building, as well as these 2 back event spaces, which are almost like 2 auditoriums, and the entire upstairs. So they had a huge footprint in the building itself. And having just survived COVID and the uncertainty of the arts and culture scene and everything, it seemed that Charlotte Art League wasn't able to stay on top of financial needs, and they ended up falling behind on rent. And at one point it was looking like they were going to be evicted, and just a lot of things were up in air. But on IPH's side, we found out about this because there was someone visiting Flywheel Group, the property owners, there for a tour of the space that was adjacent to us. And they walked into the cinema and they said, "Hey, I'm here for the tour." And we were just like, "What tour?" And they're like, "Of the space that's available." And we were like, "What space?" So that's how we found out. And Brad touched base with Tony Kuhn at Flywheel, who they've been really great partners with us, really awesome property owners. And we've had a very positive experience with them thus far. And Brad was like, "Hey, listen, if you're showing this space out, like, I just want to say that IPH would love to be considered as well." And Tony was like, "Oh my gosh, really?" Like, he didn't expect that, because I mean, on Tony's side, he didn't know how well IPH was doing. We were already kind of coming to capacity with all of these auditorium rentals that we're able to offer to individuals, right? That's something that typically an AMC and Regal doesn't really allow you to do unless you're willing to spend thousands of dollars to rent out one auditorium for maybe like 2 or 3 hours. While IPH, it's a maybe 200 or a few $100s, depending on what the budget is and the time frame and the day of the week. So We offer this really affordable and accessible option for filmmakers and educators and nonprofits, and then just private citizens. But that will usually cause us to constrain either our programming, or we'll have to turn away rentals when specifically we receive a clean run contract for a film. So the perfect example of this is in December 2023, IPH was screening Poor Things, The Iron Claw, and Ferrari. And all three of those movies were clean run contracts. So we had to present that film each day in every time block that we offered, which meant that we could not allow any auditorium rentals to occur during our hours of operation. We could only offer them for dark hours, which is before noon or after 11 p.m. And who in their right mind would rent something out after 11 p.m.? But with all of the success with these auditorium rentals and our really strong box offices of 2023, and having just sold over 30,000 tickets in 2023, we were doing extremely well in terms of generated revenue, both through donations and memberships, as well as ticket and concession sales, and those auditorium rentals, which oftentimes will cover our rent costs month to month. So that's able to hit the entire bottom line, while film revenue will have to send about 55% of it back to a studio, just based off of how the film industry works. It's totally normal. So with our success, we were able to create a reserve fund, which is almost unheard of for an organization that is now only 2 years old. So it's entirely board controlled, and it means that we have right now $125,000 tucked away, with the goal to have $250,000 in reserves, as that would ensure 6 months of operations if any unforeseen circumstance were to come about. Like, I don't know, something called a pandemic, or if there was a massive roof leak, or if one of our projectors suddenly broke. We have this fund that we would have to say to the board, we need a new projector, can you help? And they'd say, yeah, take from the reserves. So that shows that we're in really good financial standing. We don't have any debt to our name or any deficit budgets at all. And so then this space became vacated, and we knew that down the line we'd want to expand. And we also know that Charlotte is going to have very limited real estate. And with the development of our area, with these thousands of residential units that are about to come online in 2 to 5 years, it would make no sense for us to not expand into that space. And so immediately, Brad, the executive director, and Tom, our board chair, started meeting with different community leaders to talk about, like, we're really thinking of adding a new auditorium. It'll probably be like 150 or so seats. Do you think that's something that is needed in like the performing arts and theater scene? And we asked Priya Sakar from the city of Charlotte, and Tom Gabbard from Blumenthal Arts, and Matt Olin and Tim Miner from Charlotte is Creative, as well as Now Suamaki from Children's Theater. And they all were just like, yes, overwhelmingly, yes. Artists need spaces that are affordable, accessible, and not too big for bare bone theater productions or live music.
No, I do want to ask you about that, because because there are a lot of venues in Charlotte already that I imagine would sort of fit that bill. Mm-hmm. Why would that come up in the case of IPH?
Well, we have been able to offer these auditorium rentals mainly to filmmakers, and there have been other creatives that have reached out. So
yeah, the filmmakers I can sort of understand, but I figured, I mean, for musicians, they do have these smaller venues. I know, this kind of shows you how dated I am. Tremont Music Hall is what comes to mind, and then you have like these smaller theater venues that dot at least parts of old Charlotte, like Myers Park, the Queens Road area, uptown. So I figured IPH was mainly just dedicated, or should I say reserved for for the filmmaking space.
We're certainly more focused on the film space, and we typically ask auditorium renters to utilize the screen in some way. So we've had family reunions where they've created a photo slideshow of memories, and they just put it on the screen while they all connect. we've had surprise engagements where people have created a movie that plays and, oh my God, he's asking the question. But then we've also had like Shameless Society doing an improv show. And if you've ever been in Auditorium 1, it's a really small kill zone between the screen and the front row. So they just needed a bit more space to thrive. And we've had Costco Music perform in one of our auditoriums, usually in conjunction with a film that's being screened. If you've ever been to like Belk Theater with the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra playing a score live while Jaws is playing on screen, it can be super, super fun. But for some people, especially local musicians that aren't part of the symphony, it might be too expensive to play in that or attend that, or it might just not be accessible by being in Uptown.
What's the average cost? Do you know of
those
performing? Yeah, those
places,
places.
it is that is a minefield you're having me walk through. I don't know the cost off the top of my head, but I just know it's much more than either of us expect. Having worked at Charlotte Ballet, I got to kind of see some of the back end of what those contracts for Belk Theater and Night Theater look like, and the way that ticket sales, because you'd have to use Carolina ticks, need to be split between Blumenthal and the renter, the way that concessions are split between the two. And so at IPH, the way that we do it, I mean, it's always negotiable, but typically someone will pay like a flat fee for the rental, and if they're having us acquire the film rights, they'll cover the cost of the film rights too. But if they want tickets on sale, they have the choice to have their own external Eventbrite link or anything to incur profit from any tickets sold, or they could just have a free public screening or a free private screening. So it's not really mandated by IPH what is programmed, just so long as it doesn't intentionally advocate harm to any individual.
But I mean, you could look at it another way as IPH is sort of being like the refuge or the haven for the indie art scene,
Yes.
as opposed to what you see with Blumenthal, where it's more mainstream, as it
Yeah,
were.
and I mean, no hate to Blumenthal. They're doing an incredible job. They're truly generating so much revenue for Uptown Charlotte. But I mean, a lot of those revenue generators are going to be those Broadway touring shows that come to Charlotte, while you have Three Bone Theater, who is in this small black box theater by Johnson C. Smith in the Light Factory. And they just want to be able to get to a place that, instead of it being like 50 seats, is 120 seats or something. And that is what IPH offers, because, or will offer with this new auditorium, because the two front rows of it will have retractable seating. And we're going to have retractable stage as well that they can make as large as they'd like. It's not going to be the most perfect space for theater, as we're not going to have wings or a fly for lighting, but it's an option that they'd be able to work with. We typically have a lot of rentals for film festivals, like the Charlotte Jewish Film Festival or Charlotte Latino Film Festival, or Real Out, which is the LGBTQ film festival. And I'm excited about this auditorium because, one, with those rentals and those festivals, oftentimes our lobby can get really congested, and it's very small but mighty. And that congestion can cause a lot of noise to build up, and that can impact the viewing experience of IPH. And I mean, yes, we want to work with more art organizations and artists, but ultimately, our goal is to always ensure the best movie-going experience to our patrons. And so being able to now utilize a new space for both the screening itself, of it being 145 seats, our largest, as well as this multi-purpose event space that will go right next to the expanded space that can be utilized as a special event area, a second lobby with a satellite concession stand, as well as educational offerings. It's going to be really ideal for those film festival rentals, as well as our Charlotte Film Festival. So to briefly, just too long didn't listen, give you the breakdown of what the expansion itself is.
Mm-hmm.
We will be moving directly right of the Independent Picture House, which is a currently vacated space. And we will be adding one large auditorium, which will have 145 seats in it, which will be those rocking chair seats that we have in auditoriums 1 and 2, while the micro cinema has recliner chairs. And they will be on risers. So the primary work we need to do in terms of that auditorium is to build up the walls, because right now it's just a giant room, really, and to push up the HVAC system. It's currently too low, and we just need to ensure that we will have the highest possible ceiling for the projector and the screen. And then right next to the auditorium will be a multi-purpose event space, or a pre-function area, which will be about the same square footage as Auditorium 1. So it'll be able to seat about 80 people for any of our future educational courses, like a screenwriting class or a filmmaking class. We're aiming to put a small projector or a large LED screen in that space so that we could have instructors play clips of a film and then have attendees analyze it and discuss it or present their own works. But then we'll also be able to use that area as that lobby function, or our filmmakers lounge for the Charlotte Film Festival, or the special reception area for our annual Oscars fundraiser. And then by moving into this space, we're also able to oversee the front lawn area that is immediately in front of it. And we're aiming to eventually have these special outdoor screenings. So hoping to eventually have funding for a large inflatable screen that would also come with a sound system and projector, and not only have outdoor screenings there on that lawn, but then to also have screenings in parks and on university campuses, and expand that Indie on Wheels model.
So how far have you gotten in this project of expansion?
So we've gotten pretty darn far so far. The estimated construction cost is about $725,000. And of that, we have been able to secure, I'm going to bring up the exact number right now, as of June 28th, 2024, through pledges as well as gifts given, we have raised $473,000, which is just over 65% of that construction estimate. So that is entirely also from individual contributions, anything ranging from quite literally $5 to $50,000. We do not have any corporate money at this time, or any government or foundational support. It's totally just either past supporters and donors, or current day members and patrons that are coming forward and saying, love what you guys are doing, want to see you keep thriving, I want to support this expansion.
So so what's the projected timeline look like then?
Oh yeah, great question. So
Because I'm on the website right now and I'm looking at the I'm looking. I was just reading over the plans and I was looking at the artistic renditions and I'm like, from the looks of it, it looks like there's really not much that needs to be added on, really.
From the external point, definitely not. It's entirely an internal project. We have to build up like 3 walls. It's not going to impact our day-to-day operations. One of the very last things we have to do is to tear down part of a wall from Auditorium 2's entrance to the new space so that it creates a hallway, and then just rotate the entrance of Auditorium 2. So overall, the current construction time frame is we'll be either starting construction June 8th or July 8th or July 22nd, 2024, and ultimately finishing construction November 1, 2024. So it is.
Oh, that's really quick.
Yeah, it's our goal to have the space completely ready for operation for public screenings and those auditorium rentals and everything like that by Thanksgiving of this year, because mid-November through February is one of the busiest times of years for a movie theater because of the holiday rush. Everyone's home for winter break, And now, oh my gosh, did you hear about that movie that's going to be nominated for an Oscar? We should totally see it. And we should see it at the Independent Picture House.
Because usually award season starts around late January and early February also.
Yeah, well, yes, that's when award season starts. I feel like the buzz for award season
It starts
really
before then,
starts
yeah.
in like November, because people are like, "Oh, did you hear about that film festival and how that person did that thing?" And I can't believe that they spit on Harry Styles. You know, and you're just like, "What's going on?" But yeah, we're aiming in 2025 to have some type of gathering or celebration or something for the Independent Spirit Awards, and then to also have our typical little fancy Oscars party, and both would act as fundraisers for the Independent Picture House.
So, well, first of all, can I just say bravo, because that's like the quickest in terms of construction time frame. I mean, there are road works that take 3 years.
Yeah.
I remember when I used to work in South Charlotte, I would drive down Providence Road, and for 2 years, I remember I would have to merge into the left lane, and I kept thinking, are they ever going to finish this? Like, they're just sitting on their asses, not doing anything, and then to hear you guys actually, getting stuff done, I'm like, good on you. Like, that is really, really impressive.
Construction can be really, really expensive. And one of the ways to ensure that the cost stays down is to make sure that it's on a steady timeline. So I think that, I definitely have the concern that there may be all these obstacles that end up elongating construction, but we have a really great consultant that's volunteering his time and expertise, Ken Lober, and he's been assisting Brad and Tom and the rest of our expansion committee with making sure we're getting the proper information for contractor bids, and then making sure that all the subcontractor bids, like for the electrical and the plumbing and all that, is apples to apples, instead of comparing all these different things that don't really line up. So having Ken on the team and ensuring that this construction process stays on track it makes me less anxious, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I actually do want to circle back to what you mentioned earlier, before the space became available to you guys, because because I was thinking, obviously IPH is growing. You're generating interest in the art house film scene that people, really, really enjoy, because it's an alternative to the mainstream that, well, let's face it, it's literally being shoved in our faces sometimes.
Yeah.
Have there been any discussions, between, you, Brad, and Jay, or anybody else about, will there ever be a time where IPH outgrows, its current facilities and may have to look elsewhere, or even set up a satellite facility? Because even with the expansion, I mean, NOTA is pretty small,
Mm-hmm.
and and as much as, and as lucky as you guys were in being able to acquire that space, a part of me kind of wonders, will there ever be a time where where you outgrow the expansion?
It's definitely possible, but we won't know until we cross that bridge. I would say that we likely won't, and knock on wood, be leaving our current building at any point soon. Currently, our lease is a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options, which the Independent Picture House entirely controls. So our property owner can't just say, "Oh, you got to get out by the end of this year." It's
Right.
a pretty great contract, quite honestly. So I see IPH being at its current venue for at least another 18 years. But I think that it's also a possibility for us to eventually open up a second location. Now, when that happens, who's to say?
Yeah.
I would say again that would probably remain in that like 3 to 5 year vision of 3 years from now, we'll start planning to open a second location. And then X amount of years after that, we'll then open the location. We have had people reach out to us. We had one person say, hey, this movie theater in Rock Hill just closed. You should totally open up an IPH here, which is really nice to hear. It's nice to hear that people are really that excited about us, that they want us to open up a second location by them. But it's also much more costly. We would have to maintain the rent of 2 different venues as well as the team of those different venues, and then determine what events should happen where and who should be in charge of what. So it's a headache that I'm willing to have years down the line.
And the reason why I ask is because I know I know it would be nice to have, you know, one facility in North Carolina and one facility in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Especially you know, especially since, you know, the film industry is slowly starting to trickle back into the Carolinas.
Yeah.
I figure, you know, it would be nice to kind of, you know, to kind of like plant your flag in, you know, in both states and just say, hey, you know, here we are. We can cater to both South Carolina and North Carolina. Um, so so one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I know you already touched on this earlier, but when I was reading that article, you it said that you guys were planning on basically creating a space for, you know, artists, for them to utilize. And before we started recording, you also mentioned too that the Charlotte Art League, you know, technically isn't leaving that space. They're just moving to,
Mhm.
I think you said they're moving up to the second floor.
Mhm.
So do you think maybe you can like touch on like what are your plans for integrating or accommodating other artists into your spaces?
Yeah. So I will say that Charlotte Art League, on top of overseeing that upstairs space, which is known as the Digital Arts Accelerator, they'll also still have that back hallway, which will have artist studios and exhibition spaces on the walls for individuals to rent out, whether that's month to month or what have you.
Mhm.
Um, Currently the expansion, decor and interior design is being led by Scott Weaver of Clutch Studios. He is our original interior designer. He is a Charlotte local. Clutch Studios is located in Plaza Midwood, so it's really not far from the theater, and that will just ensure that we have something consistent visually to the eye to connect the 2 spaces, instead of just being like, oh my gosh, what's this carpet doing here now? But I think that what our goal would be is to any decor that is made locally, and we would certainly prioritize local art, will be noted as such. A really good example, which is random, is we have this new lamp in our lobby because the old one broke in December. Um, and it is this like funky little orange lamp, and someone just put like next to it kind of like lamp by and the artist's name. I can't remember their name, that's why I'm not saying it. So things like that. And we do have a really good relationship with the Charlotte Art League. We offer them free on-screen ads to highlight their organization. And I am in conversation with the executive director, Kate McAllister, to just get any updated events that are happening that we can add to our newsletter so that people can continue supporting them, because they really are a great neighbor. So in terms of how we'll utilize local artists for the decor in the space, that isn't entirely determined right now, just since like we have to build it first. But it's definitely something that we have in mind for down the line once that space is there. But then also just continuing to have opportunities like our annual poster contest. So for our anniversary, each year now, we have the opportunity for anyone really, but it can be local artists and graphic designers to create a poster that plays on Charlotte Loves film. And some people interpret that as Queen Charlotte watching The Room or a VHS tape of the Independent Picture House. And so when they submitted those, we displayed 8 of them in our lobby because there were 8 submissions. And then we had the artist's name and social media handles, and then a blurb about the poster underneath each, and then our patrons got to vote on what their favorite was, and then that becomes the winner becomes our official anniversary graphic for that year. So I would say that along with having the space for filmmakers to premiere their films, present their films, and even participate in the Charlotte Film Festival, whether by submitting movies or attending it, are ways that we try to build up and interact with that art community.
So, so you've been in the job for, less than a year now.
Yeah.
What are your what you've got planned for the next few months?
Ooh, I mean, definitely a lot of communication and outreach. We are currently having our Take a Seat campaign, which is where individuals can cover the cost and installation of 1 or 2 or 3 auditorium chairs, and they'll receive recognition on a plaque in the new space. They'll have the right to call into the cinema before their movie and say, "Hey, I love the 3rd seat in row G in auditorium 2. Can you save that for me?" And we'll put a reserved sign on it. But then they also get entered in automatically for a chance to win a complimentary auditorium rental for any of our 4 auditoriums.
Oh,
So yeah, I know. That's why it's so enticing. So we currently have our Take a Seat campaign happening, which has definitely been gaining some traction. We currently have about 31 Take a Seat donors. We're going to probably have a goal of having about 150 total, as there will be 149, including AVA seating in the new space. And then we have just our general expansion fund campaign. So, I believe that not everyone can probably donate $500 for a seat. That is totally fine. But if you're like me and you want to give what you can, like that original $20 or $25 I gave to the Capital campaign, we have a general expansion campaign that individuals can give to. And then hopefully we'll meet the estimated $725,000 goal for this expansion, and I will continue fundraising for our general operations, because it is super exciting to have this expansion, and it's really heartwarming to see people support it. But at the end of the day, we still have daily operations and daily costs that, yes, can be covered in some way and form through concession sales and ticket sales and auditorium rental, but receiving support from donors and members and even grant support for our programs is very vital in the continued success of the Independent Picture House.
well, you've also got the Charlotte Film Festival that's coming up in a few months too, right?
Yes, that will be September 24th to September 29th. We actually extended it 1 extra day compared to last year, which was only 5 days long. And so it's a 6-day festival. We're expecting about 2,500 attendees to it. And last year we screened more than 160 films. So I can only imagine that we'll be screening a bit more than that. A
Right.
majority of the programmed films are typically shorts, whether that's documentary, narrative, animated, or a student-submitted short film. But we will still have narratives, whether that's documentary or fiction. So last year, for example, at our film festival, we had Perfect Days, which ended up being nominated for Best International Feature Film at the Oscars. And we also had Robot Dreams, which was nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. And Robot Dreams is actually just getting its wide release now, I think direct to streaming, but I wouldn't be surprised if IPH picks it up for like a 1-week only screening at the cinema. But
That'd be really cool.
right, it's good. We did a 1 night only a few months ago of Robot Dreams, and I had missed it at the festival because I was working. So I saw it, and it's overall kind of like a silent film, just like Hundreds of Beavers, which was also played at our film festival, which if you haven't seen Hundreds of Beavers, I highly recommend. It is hilarious and so slapstick. And I just loved it. And people were like, "Heard you laughing the whole time, Claire." And it's like, well, that's what happens when a person feels joy.
Yeah.
But I do recommend Robot Dreams. It's the epitome of the saying, like some people come into your life for a season and others for a reason, but in a very creative way of a dog and a robot.
Claire, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on this podcast. It was a joy talking to you, and I really learned a lot because there are just so many things that are just going through my mind. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. It's really great too.
Thank
To see that
you.
IPH is expanding because and I told Brad and Jay about this. It was like what could ever replace the Manor House or Manor Theater, because it was such an institution for a long time, and then you guys come along and you guys are expanding in such a short period of time. It's like, I mean, this is nothing short of a miracle, really. So it just goes to show that there's not only a film scene here in Charlotte, but it's a film scene that's living and breathing and actually appreciates what's going on here. It's not just dead and devoid of any life and just goes after whatever the major studios pump out. So I'm really happy for you guys.
Thank you.
So Claire, if people want to learn more about the IPH or about you or what you guys are doing, where can they go?
They can go to independentpicturehouse.org. Our homepage always has what is currently playing at our cinema, and you can also see all the special film series that we will have programs like our Critics Eye or Celebration of Czech and Slovak, or those special community programs like the Community Impact Film Series. And they can also see our blog, where we'll have volunteers write movie reviews or interviews with filmmakers. And they can also see ways to support IPH through our Ways to Give page. And then if they want to follow us on social media, our handles are typically IPHCLT, usually on Instagram, Facebook, and we do have an official Letterboxd account. So people can follow that, and then they can also rate what movies they saw at IPH on Letterboxd.
Gotcha. So before we sign off, Claire, I do have to ask, because it is a movie podcast, what's your favorite movie or TV show that you want to give a shout out to?
Okay, I have like probably 3 or 4 that I'm going to mention, and I'm going to do it in a very weird and specific order. But I would say that probably my favorite movie is, and it's definitely because of like the nostalgic feeling, not because I think it's perfect or anything, though it definitely is. It's The Mummy from 1999, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, I know it's a remake and it's not perfect, but
the graphics are just so bad on that one.
Oh, but it's so good. I grew up watching that movie.
True.
Oh man, Rachel Weisz is just beautiful, and Brendan Fraser was just that cocky American. And you've got classic lines like "bugs, I hate bugs," and just ridiculousness. So if I had an auditorium rental, I would play The Mummy. And then I think that a special runner-up to The Mummy is also a bad, quote unquote, bad movie of Zoolander. That there was a summer when I was far too young, like probably 9 or 10, where I'd come home from camp every day and I would just watch Zoolander. So for a good amount of time, I definitely had like the entire script just memorized.
Did you? I was gonna say, because I remember watching SNL back when Bill Hader was on, and he would used to do this character called Stefan.
Yes.
Who was like this metrosexual, and there was that once where he brought in Derek Zoolander.
Yes.
And there's like, oh, there's this club called Sobody Hobody Woo. I'm like, obviously that would be a club that Derek Zoolander would go to, and he would party with Stefan. they're probably like really good buddies,
Oh, they have to be. I mean, I think that any SNL alum is probably well connected to like the comedic network.
I mean, what's also funny was the fact that you had Jerry Stiller playing the
dad, the manager.
Yeah, the manager, and then Will Ferrell was playing Mugatu, and I only realized recently that was a Star Trek reference, because I was watching an episode of TOS, and they mentioned the Mugatu. I'm like, wait, where did I hear that before? And then I remembered Zoolander. I'm like, oh, that's where it's from. Like, nice. I like that. I like that callback. Very good on you.
Thank you. And then in terms of TV show, I would say my most recent um no, TV show or really miniseries that I binged and just couldn't stop was Baby Reindeer on Netflix. It is based off of
I'm looking it up right now. So
it's based off of Richard Gadd's real life experiences. He's a comedian, and it is about his stalker and how he just, as a bartender, offers this woman who walks into his bar seeming really down and sad. He just offers her a cup of tea to be nice, and then she stalks him. And trigger warning, it does
oh, it's kind of like
handle
Misery. So sort of like Misery.
almost. It definitely starts off that way, but then it kind of taps into also like his experiences like in the film industry and trying to be a writer for a television show and trying to be a successful comedian. And it taps into just this like cycle of abuse that happens. So it definitely has like from the outside before you watch it, a very Misery-esque scenario, but oh, Misery's got nothing on Baby Reindeer.
So it's so. I mean, it's sort of because the way you're describing it, it's sort of like a cross between Misery and Flight of the Conchords in a way.
I maybe, but Flight of the Conchords is solely a comedy, while I would not describe Baby Reindeer as a comedy.
But I mean, you do have the element of like the struggling artist. That's what it.
Yes.
That's why maybe Flight
so
of the
in that way,
Conchords.
definitely yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
trust me, Flight of the Conchords would come nowhere near this one.
Yeah, I figured as much.
But I recommend it. It's a really good watch. It
Okay.
wasn't really like anything I'd seen in a long time.
I mean, I'm currently watching this the miniseries Hiramondi. It's based on these courtesans in Lahore in Pakistan during the British Raj. So I'm currently watching that. I mean, I've gotten into Bollywood films recently. I don't
Nice.
like I don't know what happened. It's just one day, like my co-host was like, "Hey, you should watch RRR because I'm going to review it."
I haven't watched it yet, but it's been on my list for a really long time.
And yeah, it's actually one of those reviews that has gotten a lot of views so far. So after watching RRR, it kind of just it just went down a rabbit hole, and now I'm finding myself binging on anything from Bollywood at this point.
Nice.
I was watching I recently watched the movie Kung Fu Yoga, so it was like it had Jackie Chan playing an archaeologist, and he teams up with this Indian archaeologist who turns out to be a princess, and they have to retrieve this treasure that from a battle that was fought a long time ago between the Chinese and the Indians. And it's just wild. Like, I mean, talk about over the top. Like, but at the same time, it's like it's also good just to see how other cultures approach filmmaking and not just follow the standard narrative that you would see in the Anglophonic world. So you said Baby Reindeer. Was there another one that you want to give a shout out to? Because you said 4.
I did say 4, didn't I? I guess I would then say just like to be honest with myself, and that
there's no shame. There's no shame here. So,
well, Bridgerton is a perfectly fine series. I really enjoy the instrumental covers and everything. I personally think the books are really boring, but I just felt at the end of binge watching this current season that it just didn't give me what I wanted. I didn't have those pollen scenes with Penelope and Colin like being in love. It was just all conflict and little reward at the end. But I'd watch it again. So what
about The Boys? Have you been watching the latest
I haven't
season?
watched season 4 of The Boys yet. That and House of Dragon, I'm letting stack up.
Okay.
And me and my boyfriend will be watching The Boys. I've been getting it on my TikTok constantly, and I love The Boys. I love the satire of it, and I'm actually genuinely afraid of Homelander. Like, I used to work with someone that almost looks like him, and I was scared of that guy in real life. So only because of the Homelander character, not because he was like evil or anything.
Well, Well, what I was gonna say, because the most recent episode they actually took a shot at Marvel, because you know how like because you know how like usually Kevin Feige goes to like these like expos, and they talk about for phase 5 and phase 6,
Yeah.
we're having this. Like they did the funniest thing. They were like, all right, so like phases like 6 through 27, these are the shows and movies that are coming out. And I'm watching, I'm like, I'm nodding, I'm like, you know what? That I totally get it. That totally works. I mean, that's just taking the piss out of Marvel.
Oh yeah.
Um, because I mean, and I don't know, and I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I kind of feel like with Marvel, I mean, at some point, it's like they've become the victim of their own success. It's like they've become too bloated.
Yes.
What started out as something that was, I wouldn't say unique, but was a bit of a novelty. Now it's like you've kind of overstayed your welcome, mate. It's like you got to just ride off into the sunset, man.
I agree. And actually, one of our committee members on our education collaboration committee, he co-wrote a book that's called MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios. His name is
Mm.
Gavin Edwards. And it is
Ooh.
just about that. It's about how they became so strategic in creating these phases and so bloated that it has kind of become a model that has now, I would say at the very least, is or very most is plateauing.
Because I mean, James Gunn fell for that shtick too
Yeah.
when he did that what was it, that Gods and Monsters video he did a while back?
Yeah.
Because he would think, oh, James Gunn, he's worked at Marvel for X number of years. He knows all their tricks. He's not going to fall for that. And then he releases that video, and it's like, holy shit, he fell for the same thing, man. He drank the Kool-Aid.
That's what happens. I mean, it's a huge company, and to be part of Disney as well, there's no escape. And I feel like too, having incorporated all those TV shows, though a very good idea of just kind of diversifying your storytelling, it then became very hard to just be an average viewer of a Marvel movie if I didn't watch episode 3 of that one show that airs on CBS, So
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, Claire, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I really, really want to have you come back on pretty soon. So just let me know what your schedule looks like. And thank you all for watching. And please remember to like, comment, subscribe. We are turning out a lot of content, but not in the same way that Marvel or Disney are doing. We like to be respectful. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.